City Council Member, Agency Director, Authority Member Doris.
Here.
Molly.
Present.
Mann.
I'm present.
Vice Mayor, Vice Chairman Christ.
Present.
Mayor, Chairman Paris. We have a quorum.
I need a motion and second to excuse Mayor Paris.
Move to excuse Mayor Paris.
Second that.
We have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Matt Dumas, we do the invocation for us, please, from Central Christian Church. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for today, and we know that each day that we have is a gift from you. The very breath that we breathe is because of your goodness and your grace. And so, Father, I pray for these men and women as they conduct business. We know that government is from you, and that they do the work that you have called them to do. I pray that they would do it faithfully. Lord, they'd be sensitive to your workings and your movings among them. Lord, that you would help them to be men and women of integrity. And Lord, I thank you just that we have the freedom in this country, and we have the freedom here to come to you in prayer and to do that without fear and without restraint. And Father, I just pray, Lord, we thank you most of all for your Son, Jesus. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Ken, will you do the pledge?
Yes, as everybody would face the flag, put your right hand over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Jason, anything to be removed?
No, sir.
Okay. Successor agency actions, new business. We don't have any speaker cards for SANB1. Do you want to waive it? Ken?
Sure.
I need a motion.
I'll make a recommendation. Excuse me. I'll make a recommendation to adopt Resolution SA01-20.
Second that.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Thanks.
We have a motion second. Let's vote. Mr. Doris?
It's not working.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution SA01-20. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Paris absent. Okay, we'll try it again. SANB2. No speaker cards.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution number SA02-20.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
It's not working,
It's
so
not.
we're going to go ahead and have to do voice votes
We'll do
tonight.
votes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes with 4 yes votes. Mayor Paris absent. Council minutes. I need a motion.
I'll make a
for-
motion to accept council minutes.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve M1. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes with 4 yes votes. Mayor Paris absent. On the consent calendar, I have a note that CC6 is a problem.
CC6 has a situation where we have 4 conflicted council members, so we're going to need to do a double rule of necessity poll in order to have a quorum. In order to act on the item. Under the rule of necessity, where we have conflicted council members, we draw straws to determine who should stay and vote despite their conflict in order to ensure that the business of the city can be done.
Do we wait for Mayor Paris to come back to do that?
We should do the straws today, and if Mayor Paris is one of the voting and one of the ones who is voting, then we would have to push this item to the next meeting. If he is not one of the ones who would be voting, then we can
Who pulls the
proceed.
straw for Mayor Paris?
we can have any one of us present pull the straw, I'd be happy to do it on behalf of the mayor.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay?
Just to clarify, the project is a construction project that impacts the vicinity of each of your homes is the challenge.
I thought if we were doing something citywide,
Unfortunately, it's not. It's not entirely citywide. It is in a few locations in various spots throughout the city. Out of an abundance of caution, we're not using the public generally exception to the conflict of interest rules, and instead we're going to follow the rule of necessity.
okay, this doesn't look good.
You are not public.
Don't get the pool.
That's his. Okay. I have a long straw. You have a-
Two shorts.
Two shorts, right there. So you and I, on behalf of the mayor, you and I are not voting. You, Vice Mayor Christ and Ken Mann are voting.
Should I
Short
leave?
straw. votes.
Do I leave?
You do leave.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we'll vote on CC6. I need a motion second for CC6.
I'll make a motion to award the Public Works Construction Project 20-003, the 219 sidewalk curb and gutter repairs.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 3-0 with Mayor Paris and Daryl Doris conflicted. Okay,
Correct.
will someone get Daryl? I need a motion and a second for CC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar as comprised,
Pulling CC 6.
pulling CC6.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes with 4 yes votes. Mayor Paris absent. Okay, PH1.
Open the public hearing.
We'll open the public hearing. Jeff, you're going to do that. We have a speaker card.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. I am before you tonight as a request to vacate an easement over at Beach and Cedar on Lancaster Boulevard. This is just something that probably was overlooked back in 1990, and we're just rectifying it right now. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay. Barbara Nunn?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for what you've done, because one thing I found in life is for evil to prevail is for good men to do, or women to do nothing. Thank you for what you're doing. The reason I'm here, it's not that I'm for or against, it's just that I realized that this apartment complex I live in, Cedartown Square, was just sold. And when the surveyor went through everything, he put it in escrow. That easement was in place from 1990, and of course there were so many people in City Council that have changed. It was never made aware to you until that sale was placed into escrow. And of course you want to do this. It would cost thousands of dollars if that sewer broke that was in the middle of our facility. So I'm not really for or against it, other than as a business person, I'm sure that I wouldn't want to do that. This is not city property. It should be the property owner. But the question I do have, is it possible that they may raise the rent? It's a low-end apartment houses, and I live there, and that is my concern. Do you have anything that you can share with that?
Allison?
I'm not familiar enough with the particular apartment complex to know this offhand. Is this particular complex covenanted to remain affordable? or is it simply a low-cost location?
Well, I can't answer that. I didn't read the paperwork, of course, in escrow, but there are Section 8 there, so I'm assuming, without going further, that it may be, remaining low income. And of course, my rent goes up where I'm not eligible for Section 8, but I was able to get in because at the time I had lower income.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were finished. Please finish your thought.
No, that's okay. That was just a question, and I don't know the legalities of it, but it is a big question.
Okay.
What the new owner management said to one of our residents, and for those folks of you that get older, some of the folks become very fearful and they won't step up and speak. But she was concerned about this legal document that was placed on her bulletin board for this meeting for today. And that she was told it doesn't matter, it's not important to you, but it is important to us because if it does raise our rent, which we don't know it will, somebody needs to speak up and ask. So that's why I'm here.
So if it is a covenanted complex, then the rent would not change. The rent would be based upon a percentage of median income for the County of Los Angeles and would not be subject to change. If it is not a covenanted complex, then the owner would have the ability to change the rent unless there is some other contractual obligation prohibiting that. And I don't know enough about this complex to be able to answer that question.
And
How
Allison,
will I find this out?
Allison,
Right.
not to interrupt, but with the recent change out of Sacramento, there's now a cap of landlords can't raise the rent any more than 5%.
Correct.
But as you said, if it's somebody would have to do some investigation to see if they're under covenants
Right.
in relationship to the rents.
What's the name of the complex?
Cedartown Square,
Cedartown Square. Thanks.
44942 North Cedar Avenue.
Okay, let me see if I can find anything right now.
If not, we could help her out later.
How about I give you her card, Allison, and then you guys can touch base?
Yeah.
Or someone from your office can
Yes.
touch base with her and do that?
Yes.
Barbara, someone from the city will contact you and will get you more information as far as what you need to do, but this shouldn't raise your rates.
Okay,
for
thank you.
what we're
Thank you
about
for
to
your
do.
time.
Okay?
Thank you.
What's your dog's name?
Lady, and she is a lady.
That is good. Okay. I need a motion and a second for PH1.
Do we close the
Close the
public?
Please
public
close the
hearing.
public. There.
Okay, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 20-01.
Second that?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes with 4 yes votes. Mayor Paris absent. NB1.
Vice Mayor, Council, as you recall, you directed staff to begin the investigation and evaluation of a hybrid law enforcement model, which includes the city's formation and enforcement of police in a different fashion. Over the last 6 months, we've consulted with Hilliard and Hines, a police consulting firm, who has done extensive not only investigation, evaluation, but interviews, focus groups, and I know each one of you have met with them individually as well as many other people in the community. The report is final. Today is the opportunity for them to report those findings to you, and without further ado, I will invite them up to prepare and provide the findings of their analysis. So with that, Hilliard and Hines team.
Welcome.
Thank you. You guys can come up near here. We'll stand together here. Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, we presented some of this previously, but we're back here to talk a little bit more about the hybrid policing model that you discussed. Our firm is Hilliard Hines. We're based in Chicago. Among other things, we do law enforcement consulting, security risk management, emergency management, investigations, and law enforcement consulting practice. And we're all part of the law enforcement consulting practice. I want to talk a little bit about the, essentially we're going to cover the methodology, some of the principles, some of the critical operational components of this.
Can you introduce all three of you so everybody?
Yes. So we'll have introduce each. My name is Bob Bomer. I'm Vice President with Law Enforcement Consulting with Hillard Hines. My background with the Chicago Police Department, as well as working with the State Criminal Justice Authority in Illinois for 18 years as General Counsel and Chief of Staff. University of Illinois for another 10 years on criminal justice training programs, as well as then about 4 years at Hillard Hines. And let's have those backgrounds.
Good evening. My name is Bob Haas. I've been in law enforcement for 40 years. I'm Vice President with Hillard Hines in the law enforcement consulting practice. I was a retired police commissioner from the city of Cambridge in Massachusetts. I worked for a governor and his cabinet for 4 years. I was police chief in another jurisdiction for another 12 years. And I started policing back in New Jersey for 15 years when I came with the policing ranks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Betty Kelopez. I'm your hometown girl. I was raised here in Antelope Valley, went to elementary school, high school, college, Antelope Valley College here, junior high school. And I have 25 years in law enforcement. I'm retired chief of police from San Diego Harbor. I was also LAPD for 20 years, 23 years. And in addition to that, I'm an attorney, and I'm a private investigator, and I am your law enforcement subject matter expert for California. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. And so we'll jump at this, and at the end we'll talk about the next steps. We're talking now about a 6-month time frame to get this started, and it's quite an ambitious effort to get that done. But we're already in the middle of the plans to be able to do that, and we'll discuss that in a few minutes. So our approach, when we started working with Lancaster last year, we started with the policy review, looking at the LA Sheriff's policies, looking at Lancaster policies, and looking things essentially in California, get an idea of the environment here when you're looking at creating this police department. The data that was available to us, we looked at a lot of data. The Sheriff's Department shared a lot of data with us. The Department of Public Safety shared data, and they used Watson to kind of create some of that data for us, and we started looking at the data, see what's the problem, what are the issues around the area of Lancaster. And one of the most important aspects of this is talk to people. So we talk to government officials, city officials, LA Sheriff's Office people, department managers, the people in Department of Public Safety, and as well as community stakeholders, including we had a youth focus group. I want to say there were maybe 20 youth at this focus group. Just get a discussion on what their relations are with law enforcement generally, and their thoughts about what a police department should look like and what they'd like to see in officers in Lancaster. And from that, we started to get some essentials. Here's some really key themes. Number one, everybody said the LA Sheriff's Department still has an essential role here. We want something different, and we want some additional policing on the community level, but we like the Sheriff's Department, and we want them to continue operating here. That was a very clear message from everybody. But they looked at, and we discussed with them a reimagined effort. What could policing look like? Essentially, when we talk about this model more, you'll see us talking about a different type of model, which is looking at policing in a different light, that a much closer relationship with the community, really direct community engagement, and help really working the community and co-producing public safety together. And we'll talk a little bit more about those principles shortly. And that's that community partnerships, and you'll see this term a lot when we talk about this, is co-producing public safety. It's not the community's sole responsibility. It's not the police department's responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility, and this model builds around that core theme. And then everybody was looking for those opportunities to work collaboratively. There's lots of service providers, government agencies, and other entities within this community. How do they work together to address these recurring problems that we see in the community? So those are some of the desired goals that we saw. Additionally, focusing on the chronic problems. We've seen discussion of some of the chronic problems here. The homelessness, chronic issue. Retail theft was a chronic issue they identified. Some of those trash issues, all those kind of issues that not all of them are traditionally police issues, but they're quality of life issues. And how do you as a local government come back and say, how can we work on these chronic problem together? And it's just not addressing it today and it comes back tomorrow. Just figure what are the root causes of those problems. Using the data, identifying where are the areas, what are the issues, how do we look at the data to identify the real significant problem areas, and being responsive to those community needs. Again, that's engaging the community, working with the community, and talking to them about what do you see as your important issues, and how do we identify those quality of life issues, and how do we address them together. And Betty's going to talk a little bit more about those core principles of this model. And so, Betty, you're not ready to talk about core principles? Oh, that's me. Never mind. See, I signed these out, and then I put my initials, and I read Betty's initials, but they're mine. So,
Never mind.
Never mind, Betty. So when I talked about this effort, it's about community engagement, it's about working community members, it's about developing partnerships. So what do you need with that? Number one, you got to figure out ways, how do you build trust? And we hear this, that's a nationwide issue right now. How do you build trust between community members and police? And so a lot of these efforts here are going to be just developing that trusting relationship with the community members. They'll feel comfortable coming to one of the officers in this department saying, I have an issue that I need to deal with. Can you help me with this? So the trust is important. Transformation, I already talked about it. It's looking at policing differently than we're used to looking at it. The traditional police department, this is not a traditional police department. This is a different entity. It's a different way. It's really about solving people's problems. Tactics and strategies include some alternatives, different ways of problem solving, again, working with community members to problem solve. Developing those external partnerships, the bigger partners, who else can help us in this community solve these problems? Because we as a police department can't do it alone, or the community can't do it alone. So who else is out there to help with that? Any department, important part of developing trust is the transparency, coordinating with the community partners, letting them know, here's what we're doing, here's how we're operating, so everybody knows what's going on. Using that technology, I think IBM Watson, again, you guys have been using that for a while, has great potential. You add a crime analyst to that and start taking that information, you can do great things with that. That also applies to being able to follow with the metrics. If you create something, if you don't measure it, then you don't really know it's effective enough. So this model creates a lot of measures, both quantitative measures, which the numbers are these problems going down? Are these quality of life issues? Are we getting fewer calls for service? Finding out why and how is that working? But also qualitative side. Are members of the public, the residents here, feeling safer? They see their issues being solved. There's different ways of doing that. It's not just citywide survey kind of things, but there's different ways that you can measure that qualitative things in order to kind of understand community sentiments a little better. So those are really essential high-level principles that apply to this. And I believe Betty? Rob? New glasses.
You got any excuse?
They're not working.
Yeah. So when we talk about the general principle and things like that, how do you get this accomplished? And did I go the wrong way? I went the wrong way. I did. Okay. It's about the structure. And not unlike your Department of Public Safety, it's a very flat structure. It basically doesn't have a lot of layers of supervision, management, things like that. It's really a director dealing with people within the organization, and where the real power lies is with this new position that's being created called the District Coordinating Peace Officers. And these are the folks that are actually in the field. They're the ones that are working in the field. They're the ones that are charged with the responsibility of building those relationships, engaging folks, having direct contact with the people within those neighborhoods or districts that they're assigned to. And so these DCPOs are the centerpiece of the organization. And everybody else that is in the organization works to support them so that they actually can do their work.
Okay, wait a minute.
Sure. DCPOs, District Coordinating Peace Officers. That first title right there. New acronym.
Okay.
I'll keep on saying District Coordinating Peace Officers, and I'll just stay away from the DCPOs if that's easier.
Could you share with everyone that's present who might be a district coordinating peace officer?
So this is a brand new position that's being created within the organization. These are peace officers. They will be certified as peace officers, but they're also being taught a very special set of skills in terms of doing a lot of the social service providing and connecting social services to folks that need those social services. It's about problem solving. It's looking at a situation and figuring out why is a problem occurring over and over and over again. Who's going and doing the follow-up when somebody gets victimized with a crime, and making sure that those folks have the services they need? If there's a domestic situation in a home, for example, is that mom and kids getting the services they need? Are they doing things to make sure that there's not going to be a reoccurrence in the home? So these folks are really devoting their time and energy in terms of identifying problems, working with the community, and then finding creative ways to really start to break that cycle of situations going on. If you look at the data, you'll find that a small portion of the locations within the city generate a high level of calls for service. So how do you break that cycle? What is causing that? What's driving it? A lot of times it's not crime that's driving it. It's other issues that are driving it that basically are at the root cause. And it's these folks with that training who are going in and figuring out what is driving that situation and finding solutions and working with those families and maintaining a relationship in terms of going forward. So the district coordinating officers are the ones that are actually, this rubber meets the road. They are given a lot of autonomy. They do a lot of independent decision making. Obviously, it's a matter of trusting but verifying that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but making sure that they have enough resources to make sure that they can start to build those relationships and really do some of that meaningful, impactful problem solving within the community. In any organization, you need that quality assurance and inspections to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that is an infrastructure that's inside the organization, making sure the organization is meeting its goals, meeting its mission, it's achieving its core values all the time, that you're not deviating away from those things, you don't lose sight of what you're doing. And then it's the assistant city attorney. This Department of Public Safety has done a lot of work already trying to find alternative ways of dealing with situations. That making an arrest, issuing a citation, or using law enforcement as the only method of trying to deal with the problem doesn't always solve the problem. And that's where the city's done a lot of that work in finding all those alternative resolutions to try to resolve this issue with the civil citations they're issuing now and having that process they set up, because a lot of times the system now is not dealing with a lot of the low-level crimes that are taking place. So how do you work around that? How do you still find situations and solutions? The Department of Public Safety is doing a lot of that work already, but now you're actually going to magnify that and build that up on a higher level. And then there's a whole series of support services within the organization and operational entities that have to support the folks out in the field in terms of communications.
Can I jump
Sure.
in for a minute? So with our police and hybrid taking over the low-level crimes, we're doing a lot of the public safety, where we're freeing up our sheriffs to do the major crime work, and we're not using their resources for things that we can do that frees them up to actually do the real policing, is what
So
we're
one
saying.
of the immediate effects you're going to see with this model is actually your calls to service are going to start to decline precipitously, because they're actually going after the ones that are driving the crime rates over and over again. And so it's chronic problems, those repetitive problems. But the deputy sheriffs don't have the time to go back and figure out, okay, what's driving the situation, because they're answering call after call after call. So it's reducing those calls for service and making sure people are getting the service they need, so they don't have to rely upon the sheriff's department or have to call 911 when they get desperate. So they're actually intervening sooner. So you'll start to see your calls for service go down. You'll actually see calls going directly to your district coordinating officers, because they're going to have the phone, a business card, email, and text. So when I'm assigned to a fixed geographic area and it doesn't require a sheriff response, or I have a question, or I need some early intervention, I'm reaching out as an alternative resource now to these district coordinating officers within my neighborhood that are assigned there on a permanent basis.
Which makes our response time a lot better now for the issue that they need.
Because you're reducing the backlog that's going on with the sheriff's calls for service, and also you're intervening much sooner before it gets to a crisis point, right? I think the other thing that's critical here is the analytical support. One of the things we see early on in terms of one of the first steps the organization is going to be taking is building that analytical capacity, because it's data-driven. It's knowing where the problems are, what's driving the problems, but digging deep and understanding what the causation is for a lot of those problems. And also looking for resources that are going to help support those DCOs, district coordinating officers, in terms of finding alternative ways of dealing with different kinds of situations. There's a lot of resources in the community that are just gone untapped, or there's no coordination between those different social service providers. It's these folks that basically are the connectors. They're the ones that are driving and getting people to go move in the right direction, but also making sure that when they make a referral, it's the right place. So I'm not just sending you down a dead end. I really know what my resources are. I know what clientele they're dealing with, and I connect folks to where they need to go in order to get the service they need and actually improve their quality of life over time, but also not only improve their quality of life, but resolving a lot of the issues that have collateral impact across the community. Communication support, we're really looking at the Sheriff's Department, again, to be that hub for the central communications, but the Department of Public Safety has to have its own communications network. It's not going to be taking calls for service, because what we don't want to do is confuse the community. Do I call the Department of Public Safety, or do I call the Sheriff's Department? If they need police resources, they're going to call the Sheriff's Department. What the difference is going to be, as they start to know their district coordinating officers, they'll call them directly for things that don't require immediate response, and deal with those situations when they can, and making sure they follow up when they get those calls. And then we talk about actual support through licensed social worker. A good deal of the work they're going to be doing is non-criminal justice. It's actually more engaging in some of the situations that are driving and actually lending themselves to some of the crime issues that you're having within your community, whether it be addiction problems, it be homelessness, it be other issues that are kind of, the symptoms are crime. But because they don't have another way of trying to deal with the situation, or don't have the resources they need, these folks are really working with them to solve those kinds of problems.
So one more question.
Sure.
You said that they'll learn when to call the public safety officer. So what do we have in place to start training our sheriffs and our public safety officers, where they can know, okay, how to pass this on, the process?
So we're going to get to that, but
okay.
there has to be, as you think about it now, you're really thinking about two, in this case, policing and law enforcement agencies connected at the hip. They have to work in unison with one another. They have to support one another. So it's really working out what do those protocols look like. So a lot of that work still has to be done. But what we're trying to do is simplify it as much as we possibly can for the community, so that when they know they need an immediate response from law enforcement, the person they're calling is the Sheriff's Department to respond. Over time, as they start to understand the mission and the role of the district reporting officers, they now have an alternative number to call. But they're not calling through some communication center. They're going directly to the district communication officers that are assigned to that neighborhood.
So if Marvin Chris' dog is barking, keeping me up, we'll know not to call the sheriffs, but call the public safety.
They'll call their district coordinating officer to come and deal with that situation. And again, because this is not a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week agency, they're going to have to sometimes leave messages, send emails, use text messages. But the one thing they can be assured of is that they're going to get a call back and follow up. If they've been a victim of crime, after the Sheriff's Department's done their investigation, who's coming back to the house and making sure they don't need any additional services or doing the follow-up? It'll be these district coordinating officers that are doing that kind of work, because the sheriff doesn't have time right now, because they still have an essential law enforcement function in terms of responding to calls to service, making sure those calls to service are being answered, and at the same time trying to reduce the backlog of calls so you don't have a long time of working. If your house is broken into, you're not waiting a matter of hours, so you can get somebody to the house much sooner to deal with those issues.
So what are the numbers that you're using? Go back one. For your DCPO officer, what are the numbers of those officers?
So what we're recommending to the city is that you start out with pilot districts. Instead of trying to do the whole city all at once, do it over a number of years, probably 3 years, to roll out the whole department to its full strength. Because what you're going to do initially is figure out, how does this really work in this jurisdiction? What's the right workload? And also, because of the timeline that we're working with, you're going to need to bring folks in that are already trained and seasoned, because taking somebody and trying to train them brand new, going through the academy and getting them ready to be a DCO, could take upwards to 18 months. By the time you get done with the selection process, getting them through the academy, getting them trained out in the field, and having them ready to go. So what we see is that initial wave of really finding seasoned people with the right characteristics, the right attributes coming in as that initial wave, identifying those districts that we can actually start to pilot in, and then start to build out from there.
Okay.
So I don't have a hard number, is what I'm saying.
So you don't have a hard number. So
Not
it's
yet, and at this
40,
point in time,
it's not 20, it's...
We're still looking at, we have to look at the analysis. That's why we're saying that first step that's going to be critical is analytical capabilities within the department.
So is that number based upon budget?
That's a combination of budget. It's basically a caseload and what they're able to effectively manage. And then it's also being able to make sure that you have a controlled way in terms of the way it's being done. And you really have kind of set the pathway and where you want to go with the new department.
And we have different districts that are higher crime rates
than others. So you may have smaller districts where there's a concentration of crime, and you may have other districts that are much larger because they don't have that kind of concentration. So it's really looking at, what the area looks like, what the demographics look like, but also making sure these folks are assigned to those areas permanently. move across the city, because otherwise you don't establish those relationships. It's repeated contact over and over again, and having the same person to call, so you're building levels of trust. As Bob talked about, trust and confidence is making sure I get continuity in terms of services, who I'm talking to, who I can trust, and actually be willing to share information with them and have these officers respond, but also then figuring out what is my network of support look like. These officers are really, like I said before, they're kind of navigators, they're connectors, and they're connecting people to the right services once they identify what the issues are in terms of going forward. So if you don't know who to call, a lot of times many people don't know who to call, and sometimes they'll go to the police with a 911 call, but they don't handle that kind of situation. But these folks are the ones that you are going to call, and they're going to be there to help you navigate. You're not going to hear the situation, well, this is not a police matter. They get a call, it's their issue, they're going to deal with it in terms of going forward. So as Bob talked a lot about collaborative relationships and partnerships, everything is built around collaboration and partnerships. That basically nothing is getting done, and that's between the DCOs, the district coordinating officers, and the folks they're working within their community. It's the social service providers are in the community. It's their sister city agencies that they're working with in terms of working with them jointly and collaboratively, and making sure that, again, situations are being done in a collaborative situation in terms of problem solving, in terms of going forward. We talked about the extension of and the liaison with the LSAD. That's critical. That has to be a hard line between this new department and the Sheriff's Department, working in tandem with one another, making sure they have the protocols worked out as to who's doing what, and there's a coordination between those two agencies, because they're relying heavily upon the essential services of the Sheriff's Department, and then taking it to the next step with respect to now doing that greater investigation, spending more time trying to figure what's causing the problem, to work towards resolving the problem. It's talking about flexible operations. In other words, these folks are going to have they have flex time, so they can go where the problems are. They're not on a fixed schedule Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. They're really working where they need to work, where the problems are, and have some latitude in terms of where they're working. But again, they're not working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're really working where they need to work on a concentrated set of hours in terms of going forward. And then they're working in fixed geographic areas. That is critical. They have to stay within those areas if they're going to build the relationships they need to with the community they're working with. They have to know those communities intimately. And all you can do that by doing that is staying in those areas and working with them and knowing the areas and the problems are. We talk about dispatch. We talk about a number of other operational components, such as risk management, policy procedures. All these things have to be addressed early on in the process that we're working on. We're working with the city manager. We're working with Lee in terms of what those protocols are going to look like and who's going to be doing what with respect to those kinds of issues. In terms of, what does the vehicles look like? What kinds of equipment they're going to need in terms of support their operations in terms of going forward. And then Bob talked about the benchmarks. Those are critical, both quantitative and qualitative benchmarks. Measuring your baseline and then measuring success. Is this making a difference? If it's not, and it has to be done in a systematic way over time. And then the problem-solving tracking system we talked about as being that method to do those kinds of things. So here are some of the things early on in terms of research and developing. We were all kind of working very closely with different folks within the city in terms of doing that kind of research, understanding what the legislative enactments need to be in terms of making sure that you can set up and organize the department the way it needs to be organized. The organizational structure of the organization, what does it look like in terms of its functionality, and understanding what that organization is going to look like, keeping in mind it's going to be a flat organization. And then development of the budget over a period of time, negotiating those agreements with the protocols with the Sheriff's Department is going to be critical. And then exploring human resource considerations, meaning what are the talents and the traits and the characteristics you need in terms of identifying the folks that are going to be doing this kind of work. It's not, as Bob said before, conventional policing. It's a very different way of thinking. It's a very different mindset about their role, mission, and what their function is within the community. And developing the written directive systems that match their vision and mission and their core values of this organization so they're not disconnected or disjointed. And then beginning the recruiting and hiring process as you move forward. All the while talking to the community, making sure the community knows what's going on, and having that degree of transparency that Bob talked about. As we talked about the fact before, we talked about a multi-year budget. The way the budget's structured is a way to achieve those advances and growth over time, incrementally. So one budget builds on the next. In order to accomplish what I need to do in year 2, here's what I'm budgeting for in year 1, and then moving forward on to year 2, 3. And that's the way the budget should kind of work, is continue to build on an organization over time going forward. So you'll see there's just different discrete areas that we think and we're planning for over the budget cycle.
I have a new role.
You have a new role. There you go.
Thank you. If I could just remember it. So, there's a part of me that used to run LAPD's personnel that's a little scared right now, because this is really an ambitious goal, because we're looking at setting this up and getting it started by July 1st. This, what we did for the last 6 months to a year, because I was here about a year ago in front of you, was that first part, looking at it, figuring it out, listening to everybody, and then actually making sense of all of this. How do we make it work, given the constraints? So, it's going to be intensive. It's going to be a little bit chaotic and crazy, because no change happens without chaos. So, Bob talked about what the next 3 phases are going to be, but I think the most important thing to learn is that we have a project plan. It looks something like that, which is lots of little steps we have to take. Those project plans include things that we, as Hillard and Hines, have to do to help you move forward, but it also includes those things that the city has to accomplish in order that we can move forward. That includes, as we saw on the other charts, the enabling legislation, the finalizing that vision and mission, which will start actually in 2 days. We're going to meet with our first group of people to develop the mission, the vision of the organization. So everything will be propagated off of that. We're going to create those table of organization as time goes on. We're going to conduct that crime analysis so we can determine how many DCPOs we're going to need. We're going to develop those training plans and identify people to help us develop those training plans, determine how that training is going to occur. Is it going to happen at Antelope Valley College? Are they going to be able to help us do some of this training? We know we have to get those that are not post-certified certified. So how do we develop that plan, the hiring plan, the recruitment plan? All of that has to be developed, and the personnel things in my brain's going crazy right now. So that includes those metrics for performance. How do we quantify and qualify those metrics? What are we going to use? What data we're going to use? And all part of this, and this was the promise we made at the very beginning, was that the community would continue to be involved, that community outreach would continue, that the collaboration would continue as we move forward, that everybody's going to be involved because it's going to be their department. We're going to develop those district areas, identify those core areas that need the first work, to pilot those, to start developing and moving those out. And then we're going to obviously look at the equipment needs. So, no, it's not done today. Today is just the first real big step. This today is we're done with the plan. Now we have to start moving towards implementing the plan. And that will hopefully be by July 1st. And in the next 6 months, all this needs to get done. So what we're looking for you to do is to say, go forth, make it happen. And we'll do that. Thank you, sirs.
Thank you. Questions?
I'm curious, you was talking about a lot of the information that you receive. I'm curious, we use the IBM Watson for some of our information, am I correct?
Yes, IBM Watson is it's your analysis tool. Mm-hmm. You bring a lot of data in, and then you can do some analysis using IBM Watson. That's used with the Sheriff's Department, but you also have your Comcate, you also have your Nitrix, which is your traffic information. You have a lot of data.
The data from that, what did it show that we were spending, using our LA Sheriff's resources on the lower crimes? What did that come up with as far as?
I don't, that was not in that data, but I don't know the numbers. We had seen some numbers, but I don't know the detailed numbers on those.
Okay. Lee?
Yes, I can provide that just as what we've presented out there. Like when we discuss the contract for the Sheriff's Department, but probably a larger percentage of their time is dealing with these exact issues we're talking about that we want to take off their plate.
Okay.
So as you look at that, is what their response is, and then what are actual crimes, and then there's things that the sheriff still needs to respond to that are not criminal in nature, but by the type of call or issue it is. And then, of course, then we look at what those thresholds may be beyond that.
So the data actually supports what we're trying to do right now in order to free up our sheriffs to do the major policing, and we do what we're doing here.
It does. A lot of things over the last history, and as these folks can especially attest to, there's a lot more things that have been put on law enforcement's plate over the last 20 years that historically were not part of law enforcement's responsibility. So it seems as though as things move forward with community issues, things get pushed out into law enforcement to deal with those issues. So now it's really identifying where's the proper place for that to be managed.
Is this going to work?
Yes, absolutely work. I think it'll be a great service to the community. At the same time, once folks get oriented, and I believe I have amazing confidence with these folks and their experience on how we've looked at this information. Again, we've got a lot of work to do from this point forward should you move forward and give us the go-ahead. And I think it's really the community partnership aspect of it and things. It's a little bit twist on the traditional community policing model, but it's a completely different way to look at from a perspective of out of the law enforcement model and causation and what creates some of these issues, and then utilizing those resources that already exist out in communities from different agencies and bringing their role and responsibility to bear to that and provide those services that can eliminate some of these issues.
So, Vice Mayor, to your question, this model is working in a variety of different environments in a variety of different ways. This is the first and only jurisdiction that's doing it this way, but it's based on sound principles that we've demonstrated have worked in other places.
I'm looking at all the principles that you're talking about. The IBM Watson data that I saw, it showed that for the retail stores, for let's say Walmart, Target, those type of stores, that our law enforcement is spending 42% of their time on those stores doing reports.
Yeah, at one point that was correct, and that's part of the discussion we had on through that administrative site process and developing those relationships with those larger retail stores. So this is more of growth as it relates to those, and especially as we're working with the judiciary and the DA and the public defender on what those thresholds should be for diversion. Okay, we have a lot of things that are currently occurring as it relates to several things that have been done legislatively that are deferral programs along with LA County. I mean, that's a consideration of those together. So as these folks are talking about things that are legislatively driven, there's different models. We have to be open-minded about how we address that. So typically, you're right, correct, at points in time, that has been a significant drain of sheriff resources, and based on what process takes place after that initial contact and arrest and what actually happens, how does that effectively work with the resources we're paying for law enforcement, and what does that do for response times and all those things for more emergent or high priority type issues. So this whole ideal here is it's like two different ways or three or four different ways to look at it. It's to reduce the sheriff's responsibility to respond to things that are of non-emergent or high priority nature. At the same time, getting into the causation into those community areas that historically, and we know this from our data, historical issues in some communities that we have that we need to address a different way because what we're doing is not working. Okay, so this is to be open-minded about how to address that. And I think the thing is the biggest one is the more we free the Sheriff's Department to address those other issues, I think exactly what Bob said, Bob, Eddie, the 3 Bs, okay, is that how it'll reduce those calls for service, so it gives the deputies in the field more time to do their own initial follow-up. I think what we're going to see is a significant increase in the actual patrol deputies be able to, for conflict resolution or incident resolution themselves in the field with a more expeditious process. That's more oriented, because we got to remember what we're talking about here is when we talk about crime or we talk the impact of the community, we're talking about victims, people's victims of different things here that need to be addressed.
Do we have the budget for it?
That's a whole developing issue. Okay, as we look forward here, of course, there's constraints related as we have with every project. That's Mr. Cottle's world there, and then it's for you as a council to decide. I think we have a number of things in place that I believe if we expand on what we have, some current things that we're doing, I think we can initiate this.
Okay, so here's the bottom line question. If we do this, is the public going to be safe?
Yes.
Are they going to be safer?
I believe so. I believe that the emergency response and high priority issues will be dealt more expeditiously. And as we develop that relationship with the public and orients them into working with the community peace officers that are out there to address their issues initially, and we can recognize problems before they become much larger.
Okay.
And if I can make one more comment, they're not going to only be safer, they're going to be happier, because this organization is going to be dealing with the root problems, the things they have problems with every single day but can't get solved. And they're going to have those kind of dissipate over time, and their life will be much better. We call it quality of life, but really it is just life. It will be a better life, and they'll be safer.
Captain?
Sir.
Opinion?
I like the way it sounds. It's something similar to what we do with zone deputies at different places. And it just sounds like the basic plan is to have these DPSOs or whatever their acronym is instead of a zone deputy, which would certainly be cheaper. It's just seeing what the actual plan is going to be and how we mesh it together.
So are you capable of meshing it together?
Well, it depends on what the plan looks like. We don't. It sounds like this next 6 months.
Just as well as I did.
Well, I saw it just as well as you did, but it's kind of in generic terms as opposed to where the rubber meets the road and who's going to do what and all that kind of thing, and depending on what the decision is or once we see the final plan, I think I can give you a more honest answer. Can I do it, or we'll have to kick it up higher, because we really don't know what the detailed plan will look like.
Okay, if you're sitting in my position, do you tell them to go forward?
Well, I'm not sitting in your position. I'm not doing your thinking for you. That's absolutely, you're an independent municipality, and that's certainly your decision, and we will support whatever you all decide and work with you to make it as successful as we can.
So Captain, I'm going to come in at a different direction than what the Vice Mayor said. So if the Sheriff's Department didn't have to respond to those crimes that take place at some of the big boxes, would you not have more deputies available to be able to take care of things that are more emergent? Because
Yes.
one of the biggest things we hear often at times is we've made a call to the Sheriff's Department and we waited and we waited and we waited. And I understand it's clearly about a balance of manpower to needs, and obviously people are putting in a hierarchy structure. I mean, if somebody gets a call and then somebody tells you there's a gun in play or someone has a gun versus a call at a Walmart saying that we had somebody trying to take a flat screen TV out the front door, common sense would say you're going to take care of a call that involves a gun. So you answered the question. So, I mean, because I'm sitting here thinking about all sorts of ideas about, let's say we have a neighborhood where there's lots of domestic violence. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's not important, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't make sure that people are safe. But there's another great example, I would think, that if we had this DCPO involved in the community, they possibly could be present and then possibly do follow-up, so then the Sheriff's Department doesn't get 1 and 2 and 3 calls for the same domestic violence within a family. You can't see that working, or you can?
No, I can. And to answer your question, I think whatever, just you throw a number out there. If there's 100 calls split up between however many deputies, every deputy in the field has to prioritize what calls he's responding to first.
Sure.
Is it an emergent call? Is it a priority call? Is it a routine call? And routine calls, I think, is what we're talking about here.
Correct.
Keep getting pushed down to the bottom if you have continuing emergency calls or priority calls coming up. So, yes, if they can take those calls away from us and the deputies have to prioritize those fewer calls, excuse me, I've been sick, then yes, it would give them more time to handle the more important calls or the higher priority calls and be able to handle them quicker, and then maybe take some of the, there's really no need for a lot of these low-level calls like we're talking about, the barking dog calls, or that's one that gets thrown out all the time. There's really no need for someone to sit around waiting for law enforcement to show up for something like that, because that's not something we do anyhow. That's something that animal control deals with, and we just have to be the ones who will pick up the phone all the time. So in that respect, yes, it would absolutely make a difference.
That's what I was looking for.
Yes.
So for the 3Bs, if we have a barking dog and the DCPO officer gets called, okay, and it escalates, what happens?
So in the situation of that call, it may require maybe mediation between the two families, right? So it's looking for alternative ways to resolve the issue instead of just waiting, to your point, Vice Mayor, situation, as you call, you get more aggravated, things happen, and it finally spills over the top, and then you wind up calling the Sheriff's Department. The DCO intervenes early, figures out what needs to go on. A lot of times it's a misunderstanding between the two neighbors and really trying to figure out how to resolve that issue so there's a long-term permanent solution to that issue and you're not waiting for it to get to a place where you finally have to step in because it's gone over the top.
Okay. Correct me where I'm wrong in my thinking, if I am. So the IBM Watson shows that we're at 42% of the sheriffs taking these calls because the state legislature approved 47, 57, AB 109, all those, okay? So they've approved those. They created more work for us and for the sheriff department to do. So we've been having problems with staffing from the sheriff department for numerous years. So we've gone from as low as 6 to as many as 30 deputies gone. So if we take those and they carp from it, and there's a discussion whether we actually get our time from that. But if we take from that and move it over to this department, that money that we were giving the sheriff's department that we're not getting service for, or we're not getting what we feel is the proper service for, then they use that money towards this. The budget's there, so we upgrade the capability of the sheriff department by 42% because these people take care of that load. Or am I wrong?
Yes and no. So there are things the sheriff's department could be better used for in terms of your traffic issues, traffic management, traffic control, which they don't have time to do right now, right? So it's maybe shifting their resources and their attention because now they have more free time to devote to those issues. It's still public safety issues, still has to be addressed. This department's not going to be doing that kind of work.
I'm talking strictly,
Yeah.
IBM Watson said they're at Walmart,
Right.
they're at Target,
Right.
they're taking reports.
Right. And what will happen is those cases will come down, freeing up more time for your deputies.
Okay.
In terms of staffing issues, that's an issue. That's a decision the city has to make in terms of how it wants to allocate its staffing dollars for policing and law enforcement services.
But that's pretty much what we're talking about here, isn't it?
To some degree, yes.
Okay.
I have one question. As a public point of view or community, who's going to decide, do we need to call the sheriff department or that, I'm kind of a little bit, who's going to filter those, where this car should be going, to the policing department or the sheriff department?
So first off, any calls for service will go to the sheriff's department. Okay. But if I am in my home and I know that I have now had conversations with the police department and with the Lancaster the DCPOs, the message has gotten out. We've done a good job of getting the word out about what the role of the DCPOs are. Then I, in my home, will make the decision, you know what? That dog's been barking a whole lot lately, and I'm almost at my end point here. I think I'm going to call my DCPO and see if he or she can help me work through this before it gets to the point where somebody's hurt.
Okay, so pretty much as a community member, we will decide.
You are responsible for making the call.
Okay. All right.
And any call for service will go to the Sheriff's Department and they will respond. But if it goes to a 911 call or a call to the Sheriff's Department, they will handle. But if I call my DCPO, then they are responsible at that point. And if they need the assistance of the Sheriff's Department, if they need the resources of the Sheriff's Department because it gets to the point of being something extreme or exigent, then they call in the Sheriff's Department to assist.
All right, that makes clear. Thank you.
And Raj, I would add, too, if you call 911 and it's not an emergent call, a priority call, or something else, the Sheriff's Department can determine through the dispatch whether that's an item for the DCPOs or we're going to be there, later so they can filter at the dispatch as well.
So we will have two different numbers, like 911 and then.
Well, here's an important thing about it. You need to continue to send that message out. 911 emergency call is always 911. Don't even think twice about it. If in doubt, call 911 because they can filter it out. So you don't want to get that message confused that who do I call? If you think it's an emergency, call 911. 911 handles it. If you see this as a recurring problem, you'll develop that relationship with your DCPO. So you'll kind of know. The people that know will know I can call this guy and help him solve it. But I know if somebody's breaking into my house right now, I'm calling 911. So you got to make sure the messaging is really important. That 911 is always the emergency response.
All right. Thank you.
I have one question. I'm little. What is your recommendation on the amount of power that the DCPOs will have? Will they have arresting power? Will they have guns? What is it that you're suggesting? Or
we're starting at the baseline that they will be certified peace officers in California, and the reason for that is that rather than using those police powers as their first line of defense, it's a last resort. And what they're going to be relying upon are some of the other trainings they're getting in terms of conflict resolution, critical incident techniques, mediation, and using other ways to deal with situations that doesn't require them to automatically jump to using their police powers. But if they're in a situation, they're going to have to use those police powers. And again, they're going to be working very closely with the Sheriff's Department in terms of resolving those issues when it comes to that point in time.
Yeah. And to clarify that, too, is that there's going to be points at which, we envision that the vehicles are not going to have, cages in them. They're not going to be red lights and sirens. They're going to be chasing people in cars. They're going to be chasing people on foot. But when it elevates to that level, they're going to have a close relationship with the Sheriff's Department. So when the true law enforcement, when the arrest needs to happen, it's the Sheriff's Department making those arrests.
And two things we didn't talk about a lot is you need a strong policy environment. So the officers working in here understand kind of what our rules and regulations are here, what the policies are. And the second part of that is the accountability mechanisms. So we have a policy said you shall do these kind of things and you should use this as third resort or whatever to make sure that the director is watching and making sure those officers are accountable to that policy that says here's how you do it here.
Any other questions? We're going to take some comments from the citizens real quick, and then we'll. Maureen Feller.
Afternoon.
Hi, Maureen. How are you?
Another beautiful day in paradise.
There you go.
Okay, once again, you're going to make us safer and happier. Where'd they all go? You couldn't do it for Chicago. What makes you think you can do it here? Okay?
Maureen, talk to us. Yell at us.
They couldn't do it in Chicago. What makes you think they're going to be able to do it here? They're talking about trust and community and how they've reached out and how our new police chief will reach out to the community. I can tell you right now where the situation of red tagging homeless camps are concerned. Our city safety officer is not reaching out. He is not reaching out to Captain Weber's group. The LA Sheriff's Department actually now has a 14-man homeless group that is not being involved. He's not reaching out to services. I do know for a fact a church called the city this last week and asked for trash cans and gloves because these people are now trying to get in front of any problem with trash and homeless. Instead of getting trash cans and gloves from the city, the camp got red tagged. Okay, this does not make anybody want to talk to the police department here. Again, our sheriff's departments in both Lancaster and Palmdale are working under DOJ settlements because of past bad behavior. Who is our local law enforcement chief going to be working under? The same council that, even though we came and told you we didn't want a homeless ordinance, you passed it anyway. Even though we showed up against 80,000 cameras, you passed it anyway. This goes all the way back to Walmart. Okay? And yes, the man we are putting in as the chief of police, once again, is responsible for the lawsuit. Butler versus Lee D'Erico. I apologize, I always pronounce your name wrong, but that was the lead-in to our Section 8 lawsuit and the DOJ coming to town. He left the sheriffs after 16 years. Again, why is he leading this? What are his qualifications? Why is this being forced on us in this manner? Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. It's always a pleasure. And Mr. D'Erico, you have my complete confidence in what you do and how you do it. And we'll just go on. Larry, is it Fadadis? Fadis. Sorry.
Yeah, my name is Larry Fadis. I've been dealing with this issue for 10 years with the Sheriff's Department. And what it has to do with is 565 Kittering Street, which is in front of the church. And what's happening is they're blocking the crosswalk. They're blocking people from walking around. My wife and kid almost got hit twice. I've dealt with the Sheriff's Department. They told me they didn't want to come out and give out tickets because they didn't want to take money from the church. And I do not call them. I go when I drop my wife off at church. I go and I sit in there and talk to Deputy Soto and Deputy Weiss. And nothing's been done. I've gone to parking enforcement. I tried to talk to Mayor Paris, and he wouldn't even make an appointment with me. And all I wanted to do was them just to have people stop parking there, endangering people's lives on Kittredge and Cedar, which is at T Street. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jason, will you look into that? Thank you. Mr. Perry. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen, and Happy New Year to everyone. I have a couple of questions. One is, what are going to be the qualifications? You say peace officers, but there's different levels of peace officers. Are these gentlemen,
Mr. Perry, talk to us.
Are these peace officers, are they going to have the powers of arrest? Are they going to be able to write citations? And what other qualifications are they? I mean, where are you getting the hiring pool for them? Also, I would like to know exactly how is this going to affect the people that I work most closely with, the homeless, because I have to be sure it's not going to violate their rights or limit their rights or what they're going to be able to do. And they were saying that you only be able to call them certain hours of the day. Well, if I'm working with, let's say, a single parent, doesn't matter male or female, their house has been broken in once or twice.
Where did you see the only column?
No, I apologize, I forget their names, but the young lady here said that.
We call them the triple Bs.
Okay.
Bob and Betty.
They mentioned that the DCOPs would be working a set amount of hours, so you would have to call them between, let's say, 9 and 5. But if I have a single parent that say his house has been broken into, his or her house has been broken into, they have children, house has been robbed 2 or 3 times, the sheriff's department may have a whole list of where they've called like 30 times in 1 year because now they're paranoid, which is understand. So they may want to be able to call someone at 8 o'clock at night. Listen, those same guys are around here again, you know, and the last 2 times I saw them, somebody got robbed, you know. Well, it might not sit high on the priority list for the police department, but the people might have some comfort in knowing that, okay, I talked to someone and he's going to be taking a look and investigating, you know, who are these guys, you know. So I need to know a little bit more, like their whole package that they just shown on the screen. I would like to review this whole thing and their whole plan because, like I said, there's a lot of things that I'm just not comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Barbara Nunn and lady.
Thank you. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to be called again. It's regarding NB1, and of course, first of all, it's always about money. Before I was injured, I volunteered at the sheriff's station, and I was also on the clergy council. I want to give a praise report for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the Los Angeles Police Department. I have a love for military and law enforcement. My concern with all of this is we have so many calls here in Lancaster. Our crime rate is out the window. I give praise to our captain over here and everyone that's involved. I don't want to leave that without someone not knowing this in more of a profound way. But the concern of this is the one thing that I got from these folks talking about NB1 is they won't be ready and available 24 hours a day. What happens to the rest of the time that nobody's there? They have a situation. The 911 is called, so maybe the operator that's called answers the 911, calls these folks, but they get to leave a message. Then what happens? How long do they have to wait? Those are my concerns. I know that LAPD has 2-man cars. We have 1. A lot of folks are really upset. They talk to me because I kind of walk the streets. Why are there so many sheriff's cars there? I said, because there's just a 1-man car. They must back each other up. They don't know what's going to happen. So those are my concerns, and I don't know if you've already thought about all this, and I haven't been speaking here for a long, long time. Thank you for your time, lady.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara, just so you'll know that everybody up here gives a lot of time and a lot of effort to the sheriff boosters. They raise a lot of money, and, you know, we're all big supporters of our sheriff department. So this is not an indicator of the sheriff's department. This is trying to get them to actually help them do more. So thank you. Cameron Craig. Welcome, Cameron.
Thank you for having me. My name is Cameron Craig. I am a Antelope Valley College political science student. And at first, I like the idea of this, of the
hybrid model.
Yes, of that. Thank you, of the hybrid model. And the only thing that concerns me was Doris asked the question of if they could use lethal force, which yes, that was, and also as a check and balance of sort, just that way we don't get another community resources against street hoodlum situation where the police force tends to take their own route and just do things their own way. And yeah, so I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We've put in checks and balances for that. So, okay. That concludes the public side of it. Any other questions?
Are we going to ask the group to come back up? Because I know Mr. Perry had a couple of questions, and I believe they answered it, but maybe it would be better.
Sure, if you want to back up.
Yeah. I think I jotted down there was a question about initially what would be the qualifications of a DCPO. And I thought, it was my understanding we were going to begin with retired deputies. Was I mistaken by that?
No, you weren't mistaken. It takes a long time. They're going to be, at least that's been our recommendation, that they be sworn police officers or sworn peace officers in the state of California. That means they would go through the California Peace Officer Standards and Training Certification process. Right now, a process such as that to go into a police academy or a peace officer academy takes 6 months. When you also add on the additional training that we're anticipating, which is the things that the other Bob was talking about, which is the conflict resolution and the mediation and all the other skills, it's going to take a long time to bring someone new on and then get them to that point. So yes, to begin with, retired sheriffs are the best source of those hirees at this point. They are post-certified, particularly if they've recently been retired, and they can simply jump back into the role as a sworn peace officer for the city of Lancaster. And then as time goes on, you're developing your pool of candidates, whether it's through internships, whether it's through recruiting, whether it's through identifying people with those skills, those particular skills we want to look for, which are a little bit different than those that you might want for your 911 response officer. So we're looking for those with critical thinking skills, people that really want to do things like problem solving and deep diving and really fixing social problems and helping the community in that way. So as time goes on, you'll develop a pool, and then that will continue to grow.
Okay, and there was one. There was one other.
Can I point one other thing? I think it's important. Even not every retired deputy will be able to do this job. It's got to be the right dispositions, and understanding of problem solving, understanding of escalation, understanding how to deal with people. And it's okay, but there's some officers that probably wouldn't fit that mold. And the important thing is that mold of being able to have a problem solving mindset when you walk in the door is going to be a key qualification for this position.
So another question. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm off base, because we've met several times and had open discussion about the vision. And so did I have the correct understanding that if you're a retired peace officer, then would they not have the same authority, if need be, if they were in a position as a current deputy of LA County Sheriff's Department? Am I wrong? Let's say they get called to Walmart, or
right.
We're going back to that crazy scenario.
So simply being retired doesn't mean you have the ability to be a sworn police officer.
Right.
But if you're retired and hired by a peace officer agency, then you have that same authority.
Then you would be.
Yes.
Because I don't know if there may be some people here in the audience that might have said,
yeah,
what
I'm
position?
Retired, yeah.
I'm sorry. I think there was maybe, there could be some skepticism about, what
right.
this person. I mean, I felt really comfortable when we talked about. I get it. We're going to start off with this model of, and over time, we want them to morph into where they've got that skill set of, this. We keep having this problem. This again, I'm going to say a problem in the home. Between a husband and wife or the kids. And, historically, repetitive calls have gone out to the LA County Sheriff. And common sense says if they've been there 2 or 3 times, just just having the deputy go to the house, now that might give somebody a sense of confidence when they're there, but it's also telling us that it's a problem beyond just having a deputy there. And maybe that person, that DCPO would have that skill set to say, we're going to do some follow-up and we're going to get you some counseling if that's where it takes us. so that the sheriff's department isn't again called.
Yes.
Am I
So
seeing the
the-
picture a
yes.
little bit?
Yes. So
I'm
the
trying to paint the best example of where that might work.
Right. Let's say you have a home where there's been a number of domestic violence calls, and we've done some analysis, and we determine that there have been a number of calls to the same location. Then that would be a perfect opportunity for a DCPO to go into that situation to identify what the problem might be, bring in some social service, some social help, bring in some resources to help those individuals, counseling, mediation, I don't know what,
Right.
but identifying what's the symptom, what causing the symptom of the violence, and then actually working to resolve it over time so that the sheriff's department isn't consistently called to that location.
So I would
Yes.
hope that's a great example of why would we consider moving to this hybrid model. I mean, the vice mayor's already spoken out. You know, we've had a crazy change specifically in California with state legislature where, my opinion, they've taken the responsibility out of kind of the ball out of their court and turned it around and handed it to local jurisdictions, cities, LA County Sheriff's Department, LAPD, and cities all across California are going through these same type of problems. We're hearing stories where, you know, some cities haven't been able to even meet their budget, or they've had to tell the Sheriff's Department, we got to cut all this back because we've got this burden and we can't afford. So here, we're trying to think creatively, at least that's what I'm thinking. When 40% of our LA County Sheriff's Department has been going to big box retailers, I don't know if it's still 40%, but it was a year or two ago. But to me, that's like craziness when we've got a deputy sitting there taking a report when somebody else sitting in this room may have something that is much more pressing, something at a much higher level where it definitely requires a LA County sheriff. And to me, it's just bad business to have somebody sitting in their car at a Walmart taking a report when really we'd like to have that gentleman or that lady over there taking care of that citizen here in Lancaster. It looks pretty clear to me, and I think that's really what we're talking about to some degree. I'm not too far off, am I? No. Okay, I mean, that's really what we're talking about, because there's a lot of people sitting out in this room, and I know there's a lot of citizens that have not really looked at what did Prop 47 do to communities, what did AB 109, what did Prop 57, what did that do? How did that change their lives? And it's changed it significantly, not just here in Lancaster. I know we get all this conversation about somehow it's, you know, because it's our community, it's unique to us, but man, it's all the way through cities and municipalities here in California. And to me, I think that although there's always risk and change, but looks pretty clear to me on the, you know, conceptually, when you take a look at how we're trying to approach this, that's the reason why I was interested to hear what the captain had to say. If we can free up that deputy over at Walmart sitting in his car writing a report and get a deputy in the car going to somebody's home where they need somebody now, and it isn't somebody writing a report, I would think that's a really good use of time. And I'm not trying to be demeaning, I'm condescending. I just think that that's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. I have a point. While we're building this model, and I know we're close to the end, two things. Is it possible to find out what our connectivity is to the community where we're not duplicating services out here? We're good at that in the Antelope Valley, of having multiple people do the same service. And since one of our goals for the community policing is to get a resolve, is that something you guys have really, or can we strategize on to making sure that officers are making sure that they're not duplicating services, but we're actually going to the stakeholders that actually provide what they need so that we can get there. Secondly, I'm hearing the community talking about the times that we're going to employ this. Is it possible to use Watson to really be effective of when we have service hours? To me, it doesn't just make sense to say 9 to 5 if that's not when the crimes are happening. So is it possible for us to say, okay, this district needs community policing from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. That's when crimes spike, or 4 p.m. to this. Is it possible that we make sure we're out of the box when we're doing this, so that when these people are hired, they're effective for the time frame? That way it helps our citizens know that in the different districts, they're there when we need it to happen. Is that something that we also are looking at?
Yes, that was one of those key elements on one of these slides back here was about that flexibility, and these officers have to be willing that if Friday nights are the problem, Friday nights are when you're working, right? And if community members are only available on Wednesday nights, then you're working Wednesday nights, and whatever they might be, just responding to whatever their needs are.
There's 3 key measurement cycles that Betty and Bob both talked about, and that is one of the key central ones is community sentiment. How does the community feel about the police? Can you build trust? And also listening to the community. So as much as we talk about data-driven approaches, it's also the community setting its priorities within those neighborhoods, and the DCO listening to them and addressing those priorities as well. So it's really important to have that two-way conversation with the community, and it's not just the police just solely going by data and ignoring what the community has to say.
And our stakeholder involvement, are we looking at the different people that we are going to be dealing with? Is there any communication with them as we're building this model right now?
Well, there will be. I mean, there's some. Certainly, there was already built up a list of some that are going to be involved. Some we've already spent time talking to, social service providers, individuals in the community. But it's again, that effort has to be ramped up, because it's not just the vocal people that come to council meetings or the people that show up at different events. It's just neighbors that are there. How do you develop that relationship in that particular neighborhood that's got a problem? And it's a person that might be generally shy and not coming to public events. But if you talk to them, they'll share the information with you. That's where they need to be as well.
I just want to say personally thank you. I had about 3 conversations with you guys, and I am really just excited for what you've done, because, you know, my heart was community and making sure that we're involved, making sure the perception of our police force here is the right perception. And I just want to tell you, from what I saw so far, thank you so much for what you've already brought to the table. Thank you.
Mr. DeRico, you have anything to add?
I would just say, as those concerns are, you know, something that's been discussed, we as a city have, with the direction of the council, have done things already on a preliminary basis to create those relationships that actually roll right into this model. With those community partners out there exist with different organizations, advocates, government agencies, and a lot of networking that's already taken place, also with a understanding with our local courts and the powers to be as it relates to those issues through administrative process, and ongoing discussions we're having internally within the city. That's been very supportive. I think we're going to be very successful. We just have to develop it quickly and roll something out that gives us, and we're going to probably learn as we go through this process too. And I believe, as long as, you know, the council's always have been very supportive, that we got to go out and try. Okay, and as we've recognized the issues that we're facing, and again, I think, you know, I was from the LA County Sheriff's Department and a very proud member of that department. That is a fine police department. At the same time, there's other things that we need to try. We can't do things that are traditionally done, especially in light of the legislative issues that are taking place today. We have to be innovative, and I believe, as typical of the city of Lancaster, innovation is kind of our nickname. Okay, here we are again. So I'm excited about it. And I like the challenge.
Jason, you have anything?
Yeah, real quick, just a couple clarifying issues. When they talk about arrests, our goal is to have an officer that's trained to the highest level, right? They'd have the capability, the training, everything else. But we don't anticipate them having the tool. Does that make sense? Is that, you know, they may have the training necessarily, but when an arrest needs to happen, we anticipate that's going to be going to the Sheriff's Department to use that tool. At the same time, we're going to be giving them other tools with administrative citations, which will be coming to you for some edits shortly. We have parking tickets. We have the social work. We have so many other resources that are available to them, the tools that they have. It's not arrest, right? So when you look at the training, I don't want to get the training mixed up with their actions. right? The training is going to be there. The actions are going to be limited by the standard operating procedures, if that makes sense. You know, I have certain powers and duties, but they're limited by you, right? They're going to have certain capabilities, but they're limited by the operating procedure that you guys approve.
Thank you. Mr. Vos, do you have anything?
I was passing notes to Councilman Mann, so I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Thanks.
Mr. Gomez. Allison.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate Jason's point that we are working to update the administrative citation appeal process, and that'll be coming before you too as part of all of this process.
Okay. I need a motion and a second to direct staff to commence implementation of Phase 2.
I'll make the motion to direct staff to proceed with Phase 2.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Paris absent. Okay. CA1, discuss, consider nominations, appointments, reappointments of following commissions: the Healthy Community Commission, the Homeless Impact Commission, the Planning Commission, Architect and Design Commission. I think we have a couple cards. Let me hear from these people. Heather Varden.
Hello, my name is Heather Varden, and I put in an application to be appointed to the Lancaster Homeless Impact Commission this afternoon. I believe I'm a good candidate for this position because I have a unique perspective on homelessness within our community. I am currently a partnership coordinator for the lead CES agency in the Antelope Valley and very familiar with getting community organizations and nonprofits in the area to collaborate and provide a better service for people experiencing homelessness. I am working with United Way on the Everyone In campaign, as well as providing hygiene kits directly to our homeless neighbors through my own nonprofit organization in my off time. I have been a local site leader for the Los Angeles Greater Homeless Count in this area for several years, and have served on several special operations teams for the count, going to the most isolated areas where the unhoused are living in our area. Ending homelessness in our community is an issue I'm passionate about, and I would like every opportunity to make a difference. I have worked in this area with people experiencing homelessness for 7 years through volunteer opportunities and 3 years in a professional capacity. I believe I'm the most qualified candidate because I have had an opportunity to advocate for someone experiencing homelessness every step of the way. I've been able to assist in getting several clients off the streets and into Lancaster's permanent supportive housing unit, Kensington campus, including the very first resident to move into the property, a veteran that had been experiencing homelessness since 1998. I have been boots on the ground in the front lines on ending homelessness in Lancaster through professional street outreach teams and multiple agencies, and had the pleasure of being able to hand my clients the keys to their very own units at both Kensington and other housing that they have been placed in the area. I have been able to be a part of some of the supportive services that help keep people that were formerly homeless in their new housing units. I'm very informed on solutions that work, including harm reduction, housing first, and supportive housing. Thank you.
Heather, just the mayor has the sole authority to appoint on the commissions. He's not here.
Okay.
But I will make sure that he gets your card because it sounds like you are qualified, and if we have an opening, he'll have a conversation with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Reeves.
Council, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I'd like to bring up this point about commissions. I brought this up before. I've always believed that the city should appoint committees to handle specific problems that affect the city. And the presentation tonight is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. We should have had a citizens committee review this possibility of a multiple police department and come back and report to the council first what they think of it. Because the city residents are the ones that are going to be directly impacted by whatever you do So that, for example, you could have had people on that committee that were involved in law enforcement. Myself, example, I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree in criminal justice. I was admitted to 2 programs for a PhD in criminal justice. I spent 10 years at the LAPD reserve officer and 20 years in private, corporate, institutional, and educational security. There are other people in the community that could have, with those qualifications, could have given you their input before you hired this firm to give their presentation. You've already hired them to go ahead and proceed, but I would hope that the council would consider appointing a committee of ordinary citizens and getting their input before we move forward on this. And other issues. It's not only this council, it's the state. We appoint commissions to handle things, and the problems aren't getting resolved. The people are frustrated. The governor appropriates or says he wants to spend $1 billion on homeless. Well, we have money, but we're not spending it correctly. Instead of commissions that are composed of all experts, we need committees that will solve the problem with executive authority and resolve them. Otherwise, our society is going to continue to deteriorate because we're going down the same path as we have in the future and the past. We need to move forward with committees of citizens, get their input before the governmental bodies proceed. Thank you.
Just a side note that the criminal justice did hear these people several times. The Criminal Justice Commission is made up of pretty much ordinary people. There's no law enforcement on there. The only law enforcement sits out and give the report to the ordinary citizens, and the ordinary citizens made a recommendation to this body for the hybrid law enforcement. So that's exactly what we're doing. Mr. Perry.
Yes.
Welcome.
Right on time, I see. Evening once again. I just wanted to say that for the appointments for the Homeless Impact Commission, I would also like to ask that I be considered for that. I've been working with the homeless for a number of years. Lately, I've been working with a lot of domestic violence, or victims of domestic violence, and I have a large number of them are homeless also. I'm also a mental health advocate. I worked with ARC and the Regional Center, and I work with New York State as a mental health therapist. So I'd like to be considered for this position as well.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. But
I know the mayor is the one.
Mayor's the soul.
I know.
The guy. He makes a recommendation, and we approve it through the council. So he makes a recommendation, and we approve it. So this list that I have here, do I need to read the list, or do we?
So that list was prepared by the mayor and for presentation to the council, so it would be appropriate to take the item up. You do not need to list read the names unless that is your pleasure. They are included in the agenda packet.
Okay. So we have the mayor making the motion to appoint these people, and this is just to make sure we've already gone through this, but this is just the clarification.
He has nominated them, so it would be appropriate to have a motion and a second.
I will second. He
nominated by paper. Since we don't have anyone else here, it would be because he's not here to say the motion himself out loud. It'd be appropriate to have someone move his nomination.
I'll move his nomination of these people.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the nomination, appointments, and reappointments to all the commissions. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Paris absent. Okay, discussion and consideration to the committee organizations, AV Transit Authority. Speaking of AVTA, Macy, would you like to come up and tell us all about it?
I'll be brief. First of all, Mayor, Vice Mayor Chris, distinguished members of the council, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start out by, I think I'm finally able to maintain my composure and properly acknowledge and thank you all for the tribute you paid to our late daughter during our November meeting, as well as the subsequent proclamation we received. My wife, Kim, and I are touched, honored, and humbled by your thoughtful words and actions. They mean more than words can ever express. I hope you forgive me for not having the composure to thank you properly that night, but it was not something I could do that night. It's a great honor to serve this valley as executive director of ABTA. We have a great board led by Vice Mayor Christ. Our board is engaged, visionary, hardworking, and decisions that were championed by Mayor Paris all the way back in 2016 are paying off on multiple fronts. In March of 2019, we announced our first 1 million miles of electric bus operations. And it took about 3 years to get there because we were adding vehicles every month, slowly. But 9 months later, it's my privilege tonight to tell you that we've crossed our second 1 million miles in only 9 months. And we did that on December 24th, and the benefits that go along with that accomplishment include avoiding 512,000 gallons of diesel fuel, which translates into a savings of $801,000 to the agency net of electric costs. That's in 2 million miles. We avoided 12 million pounds of CO being emitted into the atmosphere, and we avoided 29,000 pounds of particulate matter, PM2, which gets into your lungs and is particularly toxic. So I just wanted to give you those facts and show you how your decisions are paying off in just enormous ways. And to take that opportunity again to thank you for your kind words of comfort, reassurance, and support, and to let you know that we work tirelessly at Antelope Valley and to not only have the nation's leading fleet of electric buses, a world-class fleet, but to develop a world-class transportation system to match that and enable mobility for our citizens at a level never before imagined. So I want to thank you.
Thank you. But the bottom line is, we took a diesel fleet, changed it to all electric, and we made money doing it.
Yes.
Over $800,000.
Yeah. We're assessing our low emission credits, and we'll have some more information about savings there too.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to discuss and consider the appointments to the following committees: the Antelope Valley Transit Authority, the Edwards Air Force Base Restoration Advisory Board, which is the RAB, and the Prison Citizens Committee. So the AV Transit Authority, there's 2 elected officials. So it would be Christ and Underwood Jacobs that would remain on the board, and Molly would be we're appointing Molly? That's what it says?
Currently, the appointees are Kristen Underwood Jacobs. As Underwood Jacobs is no longer on the council, we're replacing Underwood Jacobs with Molly as the designee.
Let's clarify. Underwood Jacobs is going to be, the conversation we had is Underwood Jacobs is going to be appointed as a citizen to AVTA.
Correct. That's not what this reads.
Then I apologize for that. So they need to make that clarification.
Okay.
And Raj will be the alternate.
We're the rest of the council is alternate.
Correct.
With the exception of Mayor Paris, who is not an alternate to AVTA.
Correct. Okay. So we will remain with Christ and Underwood Jacobs as the 2 board appointees, and the rest will be alternates.
Correct.
So I need a motion in a sec. That is Mayor Paris's motion. I will second it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Paris absent. The Edwards Air Force Base, the RAB, for that, 2 elected officials. It's currently Molly and Underwood Jacobs. We're going to change that to be Molly and Mr. Doris, correct? So I will make that motion, or the mayor has made that motion. I will make it for him.
I'll second that then.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0 with Mayor Paris absent. And for the prison, we have 2 council nominations for vacant. So we appoint Mr. Molly, and the alternate appointee will be Mr. Doris. I will make that motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously with Mayor Paris absent. Okay, is that done?
Yes.
Okay, council reports. Darrell, what have you been up to?
I've been meeting a lot of the constituents of Lancaster. I've been all over Lancaster meeting a lot of residents, business owners, just the wonderful people of Lancaster. Been to a lot of events. Recently, the groundbreaking of our wonderful hotel on the boulevard. Just been having a great time being a public servant. So, been enjoying myself. Very busy, very hectic, but been enjoying myself.
Mr. Molly.
Well, I just wanted to say that this new couple of things we are doing as a city, the hybrid project and then all the cameras, this is very exciting. This is going to make eventually everybody going to be happy and they're going to love it because crime will go down and we'll be happier. So that's all I want to say.
Mr. Mann.
Good.
Mr. Gomez.
Today I went to the AV Air Show. Saw some of you there. Good.
Los Angeles
County Air Show, which is coming in March 21st, 22nd. Please go to it. Exciting. Support the veterans and the community. Thank you.
Mr. Vos.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Just an update on Planning Commission activities. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from yesterday. And due to the Martin Luther King holiday on our regular meeting day, which is the third Monday of the month, we'll be considering 3 residential tract maps. One, an extension of an existing tract map, and 2 new ones for residential development. And we'll also be looking at an industrial parcel map out in Fox Field for a 16-unit parcel map. We'll also be getting a report on a conditional use permit, sensitive issue on a conditional use permit. And I haven't got all the details on that and won't have until the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Just doing the same stuff. The air show was good. The air show is going to be probably one of the best we've ever seen. So people should take a look at it to go to I think it's the LA County Air Show. Rhonda was thanked today for being the past president. She changed her last name doing it, but she was thanked today. So Rhonda, we thank you from the council. We did the grand opening for the Marriott. That's going to be good. 107 beds on the boulevard. It's should be a great hotel, a great addition to the boulevard. Just something more that we're adding. And I'll remind all those people out there that are listening that Martin Luther King Day is next Saturday and Sunday. Justice Sunday is the Sunday, but Martin Luther King Day, city has numerous events, and you'll see the entire council out there working, including Ken Mann. Okay.
I do a good job. I can paint.
You can.
I can pick up trash. I can do all sorts of stuff.
Okay. Nothing on the Energy Authority, nothing on the housing, nothing on finance, nothing on the power. City Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Real quick, you notice the chambers is under construction, so please apologize for our mess, but the update is important, not only from an IT perspective and audiovisual, but there's a number of things behind the scenes that you don't see, that you'll see on Channel 28 and some other things, but the aesthetic is obviously changing a little bit. It feels a little more brighter in here, so as it gets done, it's going to be a much needed improvement.
We're going to fix the ability to vote electronically, too?
Yes, absolutely. But my saying it was under construction was also my apology for the voting system not working. So.
Oh, okay. I was just checking. I thought maybe that was a new thing to see if we could pitch it. This.
It was a test.
So you are going to fix it.
You guys passed the test.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to mention the 25th is at Speakeasy, LPAC Foundation's one of their annual fundraisers. Please attend. That organization does an amazing job for the youth in the LPAC as well. But just a phenomenal organization, a great event. So we welcome your attendance, the 25th. And we have a new face with us today. Andrea Alexander is our new city clerk. So this is her first week on the job. We've got a lot of things for her to do, and she's got a lot of training that Katie's helping her with. So she'll be running without training wheels here pretty soon. So we want to welcome her to the community. So thank you, guys.
City Clerk.
Thank you. First, this is the time to address the City Council Agency Authority on non-agendized matters. Speaker cards can be found on the back table of the council chambers. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. State law prohibits the City Council from taking action on items not on the agenda, and your matter may be referred to the City Manager. Thank you.
Jason, can we release staff? This is just, I looked through it.
Sure.
Because it's going to be another.
You guys are welcome to leave or stay without any repercussions. Let me clarify. Yeah.
You guys, it's okay if you go home and be with your families. Heather Varden.
Hi, I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the homeless count is coming up. It's on January 23rd. And to sign up, you just need to go to theycountwillyou.org. We have several deployment sites throughout the Antelope Valley.
Say that site again.
Theycountwillyou.org.
Is that you or YOU?
YOU.
Thanks.
You're welcome. There's several sites throughout the Antelope Valley. This year we don't have as many volunteers as we usually do at this point, so it's really important to get as many people out and counting as possible. The homeless count determines how the funding throughout Los Angeles County goes to each area, so it's really important that we get an accurate count of the area.
Jason, have we offered the use of LEAPs?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to be helping the count with LEAPs to identify camps from the air to make it more efficient for the count. We're also doing, our communications team is getting out the word about the count as well as getting people to volunteer and help out with that effort. So we're working on it together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, thanks.
Fran.
I can't speak. Good evening. I've been sick and I lost my voice totally, and it's just coming back. So, and maybe it's a good sign for you guys, so you don't have to hear me so loud. I just wanted to say I was at the Marriott groundbreaking. I thought to myself, this is really a great happening for Lancaster and for the development of Lancaster as a community, and of being able to introduce more visitors to come to Lancaster, and Martin Luther King Day on Saturday. I'll be helping at the Boys and Girls Club. I said I can paint. I can do anything I can do in a chair, so I will be there from 8 to 1 and inviting everybody else to come. There are other places that they're going to be working at. They're going to be working at Heroes Park. And they're going to be working, I think there's, I can't remember off my top of my head, but to come to the Boys and Girls Club, because we need a lot of help there. Also, I wanted to say and bring up the Lancaster Skateboard Park. That is coming out wonderful. I never anticipated as much how you have renovated the whole park. And that's the park is on Elm and Avenue J in Lancaster, and it's J. Reynolds Park. And the kids are going to have a great ball. It's going to be a good, because now you just didn't do the skateboard park. You renovated the hall. You renovated the children's playground. You did the grasses, the sidewalks, everything. And I just want to say thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Get better, friend.
Thank you.
Thomas Clark. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. I'm Thomas Clark. I received a citation for my front yard not being landscaped, and I kind of go along with the program that we're in a drought, and 20 years earlier I had grass and I was cutting it daily and watering like I was supposed to, but since then I basically paid a fine of $200 and I received another one because it's now $400, but now my front yard is now all rock, and I'd like to have that $400 fine. That was a problem there that I was very busy during the month of November. Couldn't get around, and it wasn't until December that I had a crew come out there and do a rockscape on my front yard.
Our goal is compliance, as always. I think that the hammer or the ability to get people to comply is through that fine process. Normally or often, if the goal is to succeed, the waiving of that fee, you have the authority to do that, and we'd be happy to do that once we confirm that he has complied with the codes.
If he's complied, waive it.
Okay.
I mean, I can show you pictures of my front yard showing rock.
Thomas, you're good with me?
We're not agendized for action, so the council can't take action on this item tonight, but it is being referred to staff.
Our staff will reach out to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheryl Heineman. Welcome.
I'm not good with microphones. Good evening. My name is Cheryl Hyman. I'm the founder director of ROC, Raising Our Children's Kids. I'm here tonight because the city is repurposing the use of the community and wellness houses. I don't know when that decision was made, but I'd like to just share a few things with you. Our group is in our 24th year of service to the Antelope Valley. Also, may I hand these out to you so that you have this? Because I'm going to abbreviate much of, I'm going to abbreviate a lot of this, but I wanted you to have the whole content. I'm here this evening with a coworker and two grandmas and one of the children impacted by what the city is doing. Okay, we're in our 24th year of service in the Antelope Valley. We're a small nonprofit. Our mission is to support, advocate, educate, empower, provide system improvement, advise legislators on kinship issues, and enrich the lives of relatives, mostly grand and great-grandparents, who are raising grandchildren or other relatives and families' children, informally or through the placement through the Department of Children and Family Services. ROC works in cooperation with Santa Clarita Valley Senior Center. Ms. Linda Davies is here, and has a contract to provide support services for seniors in the AV. And we've also worked for 24 years in cooperation with ARC, Alliance of Relative Caregivers, who serves the rest of the county. I'm going to abbreviate some of these things. ROC, the Senior Center, and ARC, and the families we serve have all been greatly blessed by the City of Lancaster. Thank you. By being able to have the use of one of these city wellness houses, the Low Tree Wellness House on Avenue J5, and we've used it as an office and a meeting place for several years now. I've come here to thank you and to share with you how the use of the home has greatly supported the families we serve in our community. When I travel to Sacramento, meet with other organizations, legislators, etc., they are all amazed at what the city has done, your innovative approach and your proactive approach to help community organizations who help the people that we serve. I've listed here several things that I've done to show that we recognize the privilege of using these homes and how we've helped support the house there. I won't go over all those. The top bullet point I will go over is sometimes people use the house without permission. They kind of sneak in, and we've been able to filter through that. There is much written here. I've been in contact with Melissa, and she is going to have me speak with a couple other people in the city that are working on this project. So one of the things I'd like to ask you is, please, as you reappropriate these houses, please consider, again, allowing some organizations to use them as offices, especially those who are all like us that are all volunteers, and to use them for meetings. So I'll leave you with this to read, and because of time, and thank you for what you've done so far. And I'm hoping that Melissa and her staff will get back to me and see if maybe we can adjust a little bit what your decisions have been.
Okay. Toy, you're on that.
Oh, yes, I'm supposed to meet with you. Oh, okay. Thank you, sorry.
Okay.
And thank you for your service. I was raised by my grandmother, too.
Mesa, you already spoke. You want to speak again? Curtis Wilson? Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Curtis Wilson. I'm a student at Antelope Valley College, a resident of 20 years, and business owner. I have 3 items I'd like to discuss. The first is in response to the proposal from the DCPO that just occurred. Also, I have a question about the California Choice Energy and the 5G towers that have been erected, at least the one in Lancaster. About 3 to 4 days after I spoke here back in September, my home was vandalized. One of my cars was scratched up, and someone attempted to steal my motorcycle. And when I discovered it the following morning, I immediately got dressed and went to the sheriff's station because I didn't want to waste time waiting because I know the response can be slow. When I got there, they told me I had to go back home and wait for a sheriff to come. Now, I wasn't upset that someone tried to steal from me because I was brought up not to really tie myself to material things. I can always buy another motorcycle. But what bothered me was that it took 5.5 hours for the sheriff to get to me. And I'm not blaming the sheriffs because I know that they're stretched thin between Palmdale and Lancaster. It's not their fault. But then I started thinking to myself, back in the early 2000s when I first moved here, we had a community, there was some type of community crime response team. And when something similar happened with one of my cars, they got to my house in 15, 20 minutes. And so I started thinking to myself, I felt vulnerable that someone would come on my property and do what they did. And I thought to myself, what if they had decided to come in my home that night? 'Cause I was home. I heard noise, but I thought it was just the wind or something. So I started thinking, what can be done to make it better? So I'm glad that there's been a proposal and I guess a passing of something that's going to get more policing done. But I was just wondering, what happened to that program? Why did it go away? And how much did it cost versus what we're looking at now? Because I'm sure that DCPO there's going to be a cost to that of some sort. So I was just wondering, how much is that going to impact my property taxes? Because the improvement to the college has already taken up my property taxes a little bit more than what I expected. And so I'm thinking this program here is going to be a little bit more as well. In the few seconds I have left, just wanted to say that I noticed that between 2018 and 2019, California Choice Energy increased their rates by about 30%. I didn't realize it until I opened up my heating bill for this month, and it was about $100. And also the 5G towers. I know there's one at least in Dunley Park. And I'm just curious to know how much research was done before approving that, because research has been shown that long-term exposure to the type of radio waves that come from those type of towers can be detrimental to human beings, especially young children and unborn fetuses. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michael Reeves. Michael left us. Okay. Council. Comments. Mr. Gomez, you have anything?
How long has that 5G tower been there? I mean,
I'm not sure, but I got a letter. A letter went out back in September from Rex Paris from the city magazine or monthly, and it just says Rex Paris looks forward to profits for the city and for the small town feel. They got to about September, October. So I don't know when it got there, but that's when the announcement went out. At Dunley Park.
I think it's been about 3 or 4 months.
3 months, okay.
Mr. Vos? No. Mr. Doris? No. Mr. Mann?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Molly? Okay, you stand adjourned.